Hey folks, so I took a walk on my lunch break and I noticed how gold all of the new spring growth is. It's spring here in Virginia. And one of the poems that I have memorized, I don't have a lot of them memorized, maybe 12, but one of the poems that I had memorized popped into my head. And I was thinking about it the whole time I was out there. Poems by a guy named Robert Frost. He's a famous poet from New England, and I grew up in Vermont and New Hampshire, and he's from those places and lived in both states, and so he's sort of I guess, an important figure in my youth and growing up and learning about poetry and all those kinds of things. And it's not a surprise that this particular poem stuck in my head. The poem's called "Nothing Gold Can Stay," and it goes like this: Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. So leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay. And it just sort of popped in there and stuck with it. So I thought maybe I'd do a quick lesson on it for no reason. There's no reason anybody has to know this, or it's not part of my curriculum or anything like that, but it's a great poem, and at the changing of the seasons now, it's an impactful time to learn the poem. So, yeah, let's just do a quick lesson. This is the poem. Let's see if I got it right. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay. I did a pretty good job. Here's the poet, Robert Frost. Like I said, a New Englander, just like me, I grew up reading his poetry. There's a lot of great Robert Frost stuff out there. The most famous poem is "The Road Not Taken," that everybody knows. Though "Nothing Gold Can Stay" and "Reluctance" are my two favorite poems that he wrote, and maybe I'll do "Reluctance" in the fall. It's one that always hits me in the transition of fall to winter. I don't know what it is about transitions. I guess maybe if you're from New England, seasons are much more clear and impactful, and you live in a world dictated by nature in a way that in the center of the country you don't. I don't think as much. Winter is very harsh, and spring and summer are such a break from the cold, long, difficult, dark months. Anyway, so let's take a look at the poem. And just do a little analysis. It's called "Nothing Gold Can Stay." Obviously, gold is symbolic. Let's I don't know, maybe highlight it yellow. Gold is symbolic. Gold has been, something symbolizing perfection. It's an element. It can't be broken down. It doesn't tarnish. It doesn't rust. We've used it for jewelry and wealth forever. So I think it represents sort of all of those things. But the idea that nothing gold can stay, if you read the symbol there, it means that nothing that is perfect lasts. And to highlight this, he writes the poem. So nature's first green is gold. That's a metaphor. Green is green. It's not gold. But as opposed to, say, the forest in summer, when everything is very lush and vibrant green, in the spring, and this is what popped the poem into my head today as I was out on my lunch break, everything is sort of like this yellow-green, a very light green, and when the sun shines on it just right, it does. It looks gold. It looks yellow. There's something sort of magical about that. So nature's first green is gold. But the idea here is that the first growth in the spring is gold. I mean, to have lasted all winter, to have lived through difficult times. Winter also is often symbolic of hardship and difficulty, and so the first green, the first growth that comes up after that is golden, is perfect in a way that, because of the contrast with the previous months, summer green doesn't feel the same way. But then her hardest hue to hold. Her here is Mother Nature. We're looking at nature personified as a woman throughout this story, or throughout this poem. Hardest hue to hold. We also are starting to get some. I mean, obviously, golden hold is a couplet, so we got a rhyme here. We also have some strong alliteration, alliterative verse. Green, gold, hardest, hue, hold. I guess her too. All of those are H sounds. But the idea that it doesn't last, right? That time when the leaves are that golden color is fleeting. It is here and it's gone. commuting to work, it may be there one day and gone the next. So it's a very short, transient period in the year. Her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaves of flower. That's a metaphor as well. A leaf is not a flower. A leaf is a leaf. I guess some plants go to flower before they go to leaf, and so the first things that you see are actually flowers, and some of these flowers are green, and you can see that when you carefully inspect some plants. But her early leaves of flower. Flowers are known for their beauty. There's sort of a love connection maybe there with flowers, but only so an hour. That's what we call an exaggeration or a hyperbole. Obviously, leaves are this color for longer than an hour, but he's stressing how short a time period it is by overstating that. But if you're looking at this as so many poems having to do with seasons are as a human life cycle poem, then we can actually start making some connections here. If we're talking about spring and we're talking about that time, if we look at the four seasons, spring, summer, fall, winter as a human life cycle, spring is youth, summer is sort of maturity, fall is age, and winter is death, which has been used throughout forever. If we look at that, then this idea that her early leaves of flower, but only so an hour, we're talking about the bloom, the flower of youth, the gold, the perfection that we used to have when we were younger and that you lose as you become an adult, and there's sort of a nostalgic ache going on in this poem. You only have that an hour, in comparison to the rest of your life. It's a very short time. Then leaf subsides to leaf. This yellow leaf turns into a green leaf, a mature leaf. It loses the gold that it used to have. So leaf subsides to leaf. So Eden sank to grief. Here's an allusion. We probably should look at that. I guess I will highlight that in yellow as well. And I guess we also have metaphors. Why don't we put metaphors in blue? Her early leaves of flower, that's a metaphor as well. We'll get those out there for you. But only so an hour, that's a hyperbole, so that's figurative language as well. What do we want hyperbole to be a different color? How about orange? Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So Eden is a reference to the Garden of Eden, the loss of innocence, which is a stronger connection to childhood. Eden disappeared, Adam and Eve lived in Eden, everything was perfect, and then they had to choose whether or not to eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and biblically they did so, and they lost their paradise. It's the choice between ignorance and knowledge, and ignorance is bliss, but you don't know you're happy because you're ignorant of your own happiness. And I think that he ties that in a really strong way. If this is a poem about sort of the nostalgia of childhood, on some level, we don't appreciate what we had as a kid until it's gone, until that gold has faded. And then we look back on it and wish we could recapture it, but you can't. So Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down today. I think this phrase "goes down" is particularly interesting here because we got sort of a sunset image. Dawn is a rising, going down is sunset. But just like those gold leaves turned into green leaves, so dawn, which is gold, by the way, when the sun rises, turns into day. And the sun sets, and a metaphor again, we're looking at maybe a day as a human life cycle. Sunrise is birth and sunset is death. And things are perfect, and the day is full of promise at the sunrise, but it goes by relatively quickly, and the sunrise is there, and then it's gone. The sky is gold, and then it's blue. So dawn goes down today, and then there's a repetition of the title. Nothing gold can stay. Even though this is the title and not part of the poem, it sort of serves as a bookend. It's on both sides of the poem, a beginning and end, and underscores the lesson. So we'll throw the rhyme scheme on here because why not? A golden hold. Flower and hour is going to rhyme as well. B. Leaf is new. That's a C. And grief goes with that. That's a C. Oops, I guess I got to put these all out one more level. Sorry about the highlighting, but whatever. Day is new, D, and stay is D. So it's in couplets. It definitely has a rhythm to it. We can count the number of syllables. Each line has a rhythm. Each line is 7 syllables, except for the last line, which is 6 syllables. So you can hear it. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay. Right? It underscores the last one by being just a syllable off the rest. So there's definitely a rhythm to it as well. It makes it easy to remember. We can again look at what he's doing with alliterations and sound devices, green and gold. Actually, let's underline those. So we've got an alliteration here in the first line with green and gold. And then we have hardest, I guess her is an H sound, hardest is an H sound, hue is an H sound, and hold is an H sound. All of those are strong. Her early leaf's a flower, I don't see anything there, but only so an hour. Only and so have the same O sound, and hour. So we've got a strong assonance here. And I guess early is an EE sound, and leaf, even though it's spelled EA, is an EE sound. Both those are hard E's. So we've got assonance going on there as well. Then leaf subsides to leaf. Obviously, we've got alliteration, but it's created through repetition. So Eden sank to grief. Eden is a strong E sound, and grief is a strong E sound as well. So you got more of those hard E sounds creating assonance. So dawn goes down to day. You got dawn and day. But you've also got an internal rhyme with so and go. And then nothing gold can stay. I don't think there's a lot going on there, but I think that last line is without device to set it apart and make you remember it, make it impactful. So these are all things I think Robert Frost is doing to make the poem have the impact it's supposed to have. All right, let me read it to you one more time, and I'll read it from the clean copy so you don't have to look at all that stuff. And we'll call this done. But when you go out and you look at spring, think about Frost. Think about yourself in the springtime of your life, or whatever season you happen to be in, and those days that were the springtime. And think about the symbolism of gold and the perfection that was there fleetingly, and maybe you didn't recognize or didn't appreciate while you had it. Think about Frost as a middle-aged man walking the fields in the spring, having this sort of epiphany, and then the connection to Eden. And Eden is a metaphor for all of our youths when we didn't know right from wrong, when we were taken care of and things could sort of be perfect. And the way that even in memory we tend to, what word do I want? We tend to romanticize those times and think of them as better than they actually were. That's the whole idea of Eden, right? The perfect paradise of what once was that was never really perfect in reality. I look back at my childhood; it was wonderful. I enjoyed my childhood, but those times weren't perfect for my parents. They were struggling like I'm struggling with my kids now. It can only be perfect when viewed through a particular lens, and even then, that lens is anyway. Let me read it to you, and hopefully you got something out of this, and it was a fun poem to share. Nothing Gold Can Stay by Robert Frost. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down to day. Nothing gold can stay.